Welcome to this press event with Ministers Valtonen and Sikorski. We have about 15 minutes time, and we'll start with Minister Valtonen, please.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's such a fantastic pleasure to be able and have the honor to host Minister Sikorski in Finland today. And I think we've had a splendid dialogue on many things where we spent more than an hour trying to find points where we fully disagree, and I at least failed to find those. We concentrated on a variety of topics, and obviously in this time and place there isn't a lack of challenges that we're facing both in our immediate vicinity in Europe and globally. We discussed, of course, the continued aid to Ukraine, how we can further ramp it up on so many levels, from national initiatives to European-wide initiatives and the combined West. It remains our strategic top priority to give Ukraine in the short and medium term what they need to be able to defend their country, and by defending their country, defending the security architecture of Europe, our future, our values, and especially the rules-based world order. Now, we also discussed the role of Europe in facing this, unfortunately, long-term strategic and even existential threat that Russia is posing on us, both within NATO but also in the European Union, how we should be strengthening the European defense industry, European defense and our capabilities, and by doing that, building a credible deterrence that will prevent Russian aggression in the future. And finally, we of course discussed our bilateral issues. There's a lot we can do together, what we're already doing, for instance, on the side of the defense industry, on bilateral trade, on social issues and people mobility, but also what I would like to highlight in this topical context is our response to aggression and instrumentalization of people at our borders. And there we exchanged ideas on how to tackle this phenomenon, which obviously has nothing to do with regular migration or regular refugee policies, but is rather an implementation of another way of harassing and showing aggression towards us. In our case, from Russia; in the Polish case, from Belarus, where third country nationals are pushed towards the border and let pass without valid documentation. And like the Finnish government has said, obviously it's not just a Finnish issue, it's a European and Schengen-wide issue. And we need a unified response in how to better counter this kind of a threat in the future. And there we found many ways on how to do that. Thank you so much for being here, Radek.
Thank you, Elina. Thank you for inviting me here. This is my first visit to Finland as a NATO member. We've just celebrated, actually in Washington, the 25th anniversary of our membership. And you are coming up to 1 year.
Yeah.
We used to joke with Alex Stubb, Foreign Minister Alex Stubb, that if Finland ever applies, Poland will be in favor. And now here we are.
Thank you.
We are very pleased to have you in the alliance. You are a great ally and a great contribution. We have a shared history, obviously, and that makes us see eye to eye on the most important issues of security, of the need to maintain a family of values, of rule of law, of self-determination. We are close allies and partners already for years in the defense field. The Finnish-Polish armored personnel carrier, known in Finland as Patria, in Poland as Rosomak, was tested in Afghanistan when I was defense minister. We are developing new markets for it. We are very pleased with the state of Polish-Finnish relations. I confirm every word that my colleague has mentioned. And we face some of the same challenges, not only in the defense field, but also on this issue of border protection. And we exchanged experiences on that. Obviously, Ukraine was high on the agenda. Ukraine needs to defend its independence and borders. Finland, as the site of the original Helsinki process, has an important voice in reminding Russia that it was originally the then East's demand in the 70s that the borders in Europe should be inviolate. Well, we need to remind Russian Federation of that. We did it under the Polish chairmanship of OSCE, and we hope you will be more successful than we were. We support Ukraine's European aspirations, and we hope that the European March Council will support an ambitious timetable of the accession process. Finland doesn't want to be a colony of Russia again. Poland doesn't want to be a colony of Russia again. And Ukraine has the right not to be a colony of Russia again, and we'll do a lot together to prevent that from happening. Thank you again for inviting us. This has been a most informative and friendly meeting.
Thank you. Now please raise your hands if you have any questions and wait for the mic. Gentleman here at the back.
Hello, I'm Sakari Nuuttila from Yle, public broadcaster. I have two questions for Foreign Minister Sikorski, interrelated, one about short-term and other about long-term preparation in Europe for security. In the next 6 months, what specific and concrete security actions should Europe take to prepare for a second Trump presidency in the United States? And my second question is, a few days ago, the President of Poland demanded that NATO members should raise their defense spending to 3% of GDP. Do you think this is realistic, and are you asking Finland that on your visit here today? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invitation to interfere in the internal affairs of the United States, but I won't go there. I'll just tell you that I think we should be more responsible for our own security here in Europe, both in the context of NATO and in the context of the European Union, irrespective of who wins the presidential election in the United States, because as you know, the pivot to Asia started under President Obama and even earlier. And this is ineluctable. And I think from what I have, from my conversations in my previous role as chairman of the EU-US delegation in the European Parliament, and in my current role, both in the Pentagon, the State Department, and the National Security Council of the United States, the Americans now understand this, that as a Europe that has a defense policy worthy of its name, it can be helpful to them in sharing the burden, in managing their resources for other challenges. So we should, I think the idea of European defense is an idea whose time has come. And you can see it in opinion polls. The Europeans overwhelmingly support two new areas of integration. After the pandemic, health, we were caught unprepared for the pandemic. Citizens demand that we are better prepared. And you know, defense is actually quite similar. You're preparing for something you do not wish, but it's an insurance policy. And our citizens are demanding a European defense insurance policy, and we should provide it, I think. And your second question, the 3%. Look, Poland has been spending 2% by law, by kind of super law, for the last 15 years. This was changed to 3% last year. This year, it's actually going to be more than 3%. So I think what President Duda was saying, that Poland leads by example. I think at this stage it would be good if even more allies were able to declare in Washington in the summer that they are at 2. But we are flank countries. You know, it is not an accident that the closer you are to Russia, the more you spend on defense.
And then we have a gentleman here at the back.
Hello, good morning. Paweł Balinowski, Polish television public broadcaster. I was going to ask about the GDP, but you covered that. So I would like to ask about the position of European Commissioner, Defense Commissioner, new position. In your opinion, and this is the question for both of your ministers, please, who should be, I'm not asking about the name of the commissioner, but do you think that this should be a person from Eastern Europe, for example, and how much power this person, this office should hold? I mean, should this office have a very strong influence on the member states, or should it be just a soft power?
Well, if I start, I think it's, first of all, extremely important that we will have a defense commissioner in the coming commission in order to really lay out there that this is something that we are going to focus on the next term, the next 5 years, and then probably also beyond, not only in order to coordinate all our efforts in increasing and strengthening European deterrence and defense, both within NATO, as most EU members are members in NATO as well, but also within the European Union, because there's so much we can do in the EU, which is sort of below the threshold of Article 5 of NATO, especially what comes to these hybrid threats, like talked about, instrumentalization of people, but also what comes to military mobility, and especially what comes to the defense industry and ramping that up. And then finally, to your question, I'm not obviously naming any names here, and also not taking any position where that person should come from. I think we need a powerful, experienced person from whichever location in Europe who takes this challenge seriously and really understands that Russia is a long-term existential threat to Europe, and we need to do so much more together.
Well, look, I was a parliamentarian of Civic Platform, European People's Party, and of course I serve in that sense an EPP-led government. In the conference on the future of Europe, the EPP already last year proposed that we should have a joint headquarters, that we should have a reinforced brigade capable of addressing lower order challenges on Europe's periphery, that we should have joint rules of engagement, that we should have this brigade being politically subjugated to the Foreign Affairs Council, and that there should be a defense commissioner. And I completely agree with Elina that it should be the best person for the job. I can see an argument for that commissioner actually coming from one of the largest member states, because the point is not to name a problem, the problem is to solve it. And it would show commitment by the largest countries to Europe defending a defense policy worthy of its name. And we really need it.
We had a lady here in the front.
Laura Pylvänen from MTV News Finland. About the border issue you mentioned earlier, on the Polish border, migrants have been pushed back, and Human Rights Watch has documented at least 55 deaths after the border guards' pushbacks. And Poland has established special search and rescue teams on the border, but organizations say that is not enough as long as migrants are turned away to Belarus. Is this the new way, is this the way the new government is going to continue handling the situation on the border with Belarus? And then for Minister Valtonen, I would like to ask comments on the answer that we hear from Minister Sikorski. And also, as the government here in Finland is also preparing the new decision, what we're going to do on the eastern border with Russia, are there some elements in the Poland's model that Finland is keen on applying on our border and some elements that maybe not?
There is a reason why this issue was not a subject in our election campaign last year, because there isn't that much of a difference on this issue, namely that the external perimeter of the Schengen zone needs to be protected, that countries or groups of countries, as in this case, have the right to decide who comes in and who does not. And I'm speaking to you as a former refugee myself. But you should also remember that these are not random people who have arrived on the Polish-Belarusian border by accident. This is a hybrid operation against the EU run by Lukashenko and Putin. These people are on purpose brought to Belarus from Africa and Asia in order to push them across. It's a very difficult issue. There'll be a delegation of the Polish Interior Ministry to exchange experiences, some good, some bad, because we have been targeted by Russia and Belarus in this operation, and we need to find an effective and humane response.
Well, first of all, agreeing 100% with everything what the minister said, I think we need a European response for this, because it's exactly as Radek said. I mean, obviously, these people entering either Poland or Finland or whichever country in the European Union, they are entering not just that country, but effectively the European Union and the Schengen area. So we need to be more effective in finding unified ways to tackle this phenomenon, of course, in a humane way. Currently, the situation has been more that border nations have been sort of nationally trying to figure out ways to tackle, because obviously it's a wicked problem, because it's people. So we see an outside power who is hostile towards us, making use of civilian people from third countries and using that fully also in information warfare. So we need to have an effective response for this, and of course it has to be noted as well that unfortunately, or in the sense back in the time when, say, the Geneva Convention was drafted and the international agreements protecting human rights, and also the EU directives pointing at protecting human rights, there was no knowledge of a situation that we are facing now, of a country effectively instrumentalizing people and posing as refugees, which they are not. So we need a common response for this, and at least, and at this stage, of course, we have to act nationally. Poland has done it. Finland will do it as well. We unfortunately had to close our entire eastern border for some months, and we are now looking to draft new legislation to more effectively counter this phenomenon in the future. And we find significant political support for this across Europe. And I think, and I hope, together with the help of our partners and allies such as Poland, who will be sending a delegation to Finland to discuss this issue, we might be able to draft legislation which could even be like an example for the entirety of Europe. And now that we are looking at the upcoming European elections, I'm sure this will be a significant topic, not just in the elections, but for the Commission thereafter and the European Parliament.
And that brings us to the end of the event. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, ministers.
Thank you so much. Will we stay here?
Ministers, I'll escort you.
I see.
You will go.
If you want to